The Birthmark. Adapted by Nathaniel Hawthorne. Near the end of the last century, there lived a very smart man who studied science. He was an expert in many areas of natural science. Not long before this story begins, something happened that changed his life. He fell in love. This love felt stronger than anything he had ever felt for science. He left his lab in the hands of his helper, cleaned the smoke from his face, washed the stains of chemicals off his fingers, and asked a beautiful woman to marry him. In those days, people were excited about new discoveries like electricity. Some scientists believed that if they kept learning more and more, one day they could discover how to create life itself. They thought they might even be able to make new worlds. We do not know if this man, named Aylmer, believed he could do all that. But we do know he had spent so much time studying science that nothing else had ever pulled him away from it. His love for his new wife was very strong, but it was strongest when it was mixed with his love for science. This mix of love and science led to something strange and important. One day, not long after the wedding, Aylmer looked at his wife with a worried face. He kept looking at her, and the worry grew until he finally spoke. "Georgiana," he said, "have you ever thought that the little mark on your cheek could be removed?" "No, never," said Georgiana with a smile. But when she saw that her husband looked very serious, she blushed. "To be honest, so many people have said it looks like a charm that I thought maybe it really was." Maybe it would be charming on someone else," said Aylmer, "but not on you. No, my dear Georgiana, you were made so close to perfect by nature that even this tiniest flaw, whether it is a flaw or a beauty, feels wrong. It reminds me that you are not perfect." "You're shocked by it, my husband?" Georgiana said, hurt. At first her face turned red with anger, but then she began to cry. "Then why did you take me away from my mother? You can't love something that shocks you." To explain this conversation, we must say that Georgiana had a special mark in the middle of her left cheek. It looked as if it was part of her skin. Her face usually had a healthy but soft pink color, and the mark was a darker red. This made it hard to clearly see the shape of the mark. When she blushed, the mark seemed to fade away as her whole cheek turned red. But when she turned pale, the mark stood out again, like a red stain on white snow. Aylmer sometimes thought it looked too clear and even scary. The mark looked a bit like a tiny human hand. Georgiana's lovers used to say that a fairy had touched her cheek when she was born and left a magic handprint. They believed this mark showed she had powers to win everyone's heart. Many men said they would risk their lives just to kiss the tiny hand. Still, not everyone liked it. Some people, only women, said the red hand made her less beautiful, even ugly. But saying that was like calling a small blue spot on perfect white marble ugly. It made no sense. Most men thought the mark didn't hurt her beauty at all. If anything, they only wished it gone so she could be truly perfect. After marrying Georgiana, because he didn't care much about it before, Aylmer realized he felt the same way. He wished the mark would go away. If Georgiana had been less beautiful, if there had been anything else to complain about, Aylmer might have found the little red hand charming. It showed more clearly when she felt strong emotions, like her heart was making it glow. But since she seemed perfect in every other way, this one small mark started to bother him more and more. He saw it as the one flaw that nature gives all things, to remind us that nothing is truly perfect and that everything must one day fade or die. To Aylmer, the red hand became a symbol that even the most beautiful people must still face sin, sadness, age, and death. The more he thought this way, the more terrible the birthmark seemed to him. It even brought him more pain and fear than Georgiana's beauty ever brought him joy. At all the moments that should have been happy, Aylmer would, without meaning to, bring up the topic of the birthmark. At first, it seemed like a small thing, but over time it became the only thing he could think about. Every morning, when he looked at his wife's face, the first thing he noticed was the mark. And in the evenings, when they sat together by the fire, his eyes would quietly return to her cheek. The light of the flames would make the red mark glow like a ghostly hand. Georgiana began to feel afraid whenever he looked at her that way. Just one glance from him, with that certain expression on his face, would make her face turn pale. And against that pale skin, the red hand stood out even more, like a shiny red stone carved into white marble. One night, as the lights in the room were growing dim and the mark on her cheek was hard to see, Georgiana herself brought up the subject for the first time. "Do you remember, dear Aylmer?" said Georgiana, trying to smile. "Do you remember a dream last night about this awful hand?" No, I don't," Aylmer said quickly, surprised. Then, trying to hide how deeply the question affected him, he added in a calm, flat voice, "I might have dreamed of it, since I was thinking about it so much before falling asleep." "So you did dream of it?" said Georgiana quickly, afraid she might cry before she finished. "It was a terrible dream. I can't believe you forgot it. Can you really not remember this one thing you said? It is in her heart now. We must have it out." "Think, my husband, because I really want you to remember that dream. The mind is troubled when even sleep, who is supposed to keep dreams quiet and hidden, lets them escape and bring fear into our waking life." Aylmer now remembered the dream. He had imagined that he and his assistant Aminadab were trying to remove the birthmark with surgery, but the deeper he cut, the deeper the mark sank, until the tiny red hand seemed to be holding on to Georgiana's heart. Still, in the dream, Aylmer was determined to cut it out. As the memory of the dream became clear, Aylmer sat silently with his wife, feeling guilty. Often the truth comes to us in dreams, even when we lie to ourselves while we're awake. Until now, Aylmer hadn't realized how much this one idea, removing the birthmark, had taken over his thoughts, or how far he might be willing to go just to feel at peace. "Aylmer," said Georgiana seriously, "I don't know what it might cost us to get rid of this terrible birthmark. Maybe removing it will leave me badly scarred, or maybe the mark goes as deep as my life itself. Do we even know if it's possible to open the tight grip of this tiny hand that was placed on me before I was born?" "My dearest Georgiana, I've thought about this a lot," Aylmer said quickly. "I'm sure it can be removed." "If there's even the smallest chance," Georgiana went on, "then try it, no matter the risk. I don't care about danger. This mark makes me feel like I'm disgusting to you. Life, like this, is too heavy to carry. I would gladly give it up. Either take away this awful hand or take my life. You are a great scientist. Everyone knows how smart you are. You've done amazing things. Can't you remove this tiny mark, which I can cover with just 2 fingers? Is this really too hard for you, even for your own peace of mind and to save your poor wife from going mad?" "My noble, dear, loving wife," cried Aylmer with joy. "Don't doubt what I can do. I've already thought deeply about this, so deeply that I've almost learned how to create a human being. You, Georgiana, have brought me deeper into science than ever before. I truly believe I can make your cheek just as perfect as the other. And then, oh, how proud I will be when I fix what nature left imperfect in her most beautiful creation. Not even Pygmalion felt more joy when his statue came to life than I will feel." "It is decided then," said Georgiana, giving a faint smile. "And Aylmer, don't stop, even if the birthmark ends up hiding in my heart." Her husband gently kissed her cheek, but not the one with the red hand. The next day, Aylmer told his wife about a plan he had made. He needed to think deeply and watch her closely during the process. Georgiana would also need peace and quiet for the treatment to work, so they decided to stay in the large rooms Aylmer used as a laboratory. This was the place where, during his hard-working youth, Aylmer had made big scientific discoveries that impressed even the smartest people in Europe. In that laboratory, Aylmer had calmly studied the secrets of nature. He had figured out how volcanoes keep burning, and how fountains spring from deep in the earth, some with pure water, others with healing powers. Long ago, he had also studied the human body and tried to understand how nature takes in air, earth, and spirit to create human life, her most amazing creation. But he had given up that study, realizing what all scientists eventually learn, that Mother Nature, though she seems open, hides her secrets well. She lets us destroy things, but rarely fix them, and never copy her work. Now, Aylmer took up these old studies again, not because he had the same hopes as before, but because they were filled with truths about how the body works, and they were part of his plan to treat Georgiana. As Aylmer brought Georgiana into the laboratory, she felt cold and shaky. Aylmer tried to smile at her to make her feel better, but when he saw how bright the birthmark looked against her pale skin, he suddenly shivered. He couldn't hide it. Georgiana fainted. "Aminadab! Aminadab!" shouted Aylmer, stomping his foot on the floor. Right away, a short but strong man came out of a room nearby. He had messy hair hanging around his face, which was dirty from the smoke of the furnace. This was Aminadab, Aylmer's assistant throughout his science work. He was very good with machines and tools. He didn't understand the science behind what they were doing, but he could follow Aylmer's instructions perfectly. With his large body, wild hair, and smoky smell, Aminadab seemed to represent physical strength. Aylmer, with his thin body and thoughtful face, seemed to represent the mind and spirit. "Open the door to the sitting room, Aminadab," said Aylmer, "and burn some sweet-smelling incense." "Yes, master," said Aminadab, looking closely at Georgiana, who was still fainted. Then he mumbled to himself, "If she were my wife, I'd never try to get rid of that birthmark." When Georgiana woke up, she found herself breathing sweet, strong perfume. The smell had helped bring her back from her faint. The room around her looked magical. Aylmer had changed the dark, smoky rooms where he used to work into a series of beautiful rooms, perfect for a woman to stay in. The walls were covered with rich curtains, which made the room feel grand and soft. The curtains hung from the ceiling to the floor, hiding every corner and edge, making it feel like the room floated in the clouds. Instead of letting sunlight in, which would have interfered with his experiments, Aylmer used sweet-smelling lamps that gave off lights of different colors. Together, the colors filled the room with a soft, glowing purple light. Aylmer knelt beside his wife, watching her closely but not worried. He believed in his science and felt sure that he could protect her from any harm. "Where am I? I remember," said Georgiana softly. She put her hand on her cheek to cover the birthmark, afraid of what her husband might think. "Don't be afraid, my love," said Aylmer. "Don't hide from me. Believe me, Georgiana, I'm even glad for this one flaw, because it will be such joy to remove it." "Oh, please stop," Georgiana said sadly. "Please don't look at it again. I'll never forget the way you shuddered when you saw it." To help calm Georgiana and take her mind off real worries, Aylmer showed her some light and fun tricks that he had learned from science, besides his deeper studies. Light, floating shapes, like ideas made of air, and images of magical beauty appeared and danced before her, leaving little glowing footprints in beams of light. Georgiana had a small idea of how these light tricks worked, but they were so perfect, it almost felt like her husband could control the spirit world. Then, when she wanted to look outside her quiet room, it was as if her thoughts were heard. Moving pictures of the outside world appeared on a screen. The scenes and people looked real, but they had that special dreamlike quality that makes a picture feel more beautiful than the real thing. When she grew tired of watching, Aylmer told her to look at a pot filled with dirt. At first, she wasn't very interested, but soon she was surprised to see a small sprout rising from the soil. Then came the thin stem, and the leaves slowly opened up. In the middle of them was a perfect and lovely flower. "It's magic!" cried Georgiana. "I'm afraid to touch it." "Go ahead, pick it," said Aylmer. "Pick it and smell its sweet scent while you can. It will fade in a few moments and leave only dry seeds behind, but from those seeds, new flowers like it can grow again." But as soon as Georgiana touched the flower, the whole plant became ruined. Its leaves turned black, as if they had been burned by fire. "There was too much energy," said Aylmer, thinking aloud. To make up for this failed experiment, he said he would try to take her portrait using a new scientific method he had invented. The picture would be made by light shining on a shiny metal plate. Georgiana agreed, but when she looked at the result, she was scared. It was blurry, and her features couldn't be seen clearly. But one thing was clear. The small shape of a hand appeared where her cheek should have been. Aylmer quickly grabbed the metal plate and threw it into a jar of strong acid. Still, he soon forgot these disappointing failures. Between his studies and chemistry experiments, he would visit her, tired and red-faced, but full of energy just from being near her. He talked with excitement about the power of science. He told her stories of the old alchemists, who spent many years trying to find a special solution that could turn anything worthless into gold. Aylmer believed that using clear and simple science, it might actually be possible to find such a solution, but he added, if a scientist ever became wise enough to create it, he would also be wise enough not to use it. He had unusual ideas about the elixir of life, too. He hinted that he could make a drink to extend life for many years, maybe forever. But he believed such a drink would upset the natural order of the world and bring sadness to everyone, especially the person who drank it. "Aylmer, are you serious?" asked Georgiana, looking at him with surprise and fear. "It's frightening to have that kind of power, or even to imagine having it." "Oh, don't be afraid, my love," said Aylmer. "I would never use such strange powers to harm either you or myself. But think about this. How small and simple it would be in comparison to remove that tiny hand." As soon as he mentioned the birthmark, Georgiana pulled away, as if a hot piece of metal had touched her cheek. Aylmer went back to his work. Georgiana could hear his voice from the far-off furnace room, giving orders to Aminadab. The assistant's rough and strange voice answered him. It sounded more like a grunt or growl than real speech. After being away for hours, Aylmer returned and said she should now look at his collection of chemical items and natural treasures. Among the bottles, he showed her a tiny glass vial. He said it held a gentle but powerful scent, strong enough to fill all the breezes blowing across a whole kingdom. It was very valuable, and as he spoke, he opened the vial and let some of the perfume into the air. It filled the room with a strong and refreshing smell. "And what is this?" Georgiana asked, pointing to a small glass globe filled with a golden liquid. "It's so beautiful that it looks like it could be the elixir of life." "In one way it is," said Aylmer. "Or really it's more like a potion for immortality. It's the most powerful poison ever made in this world. With it, I could decide how long someone would live just by pointing them out. A small dose would let them live for years. A strong dose would kill them in one breath. Even a king on his throne couldn't protect his life if I believed that taking it would help the good of many people." "Why would you keep such a terrible poison?" Georgiana asked, shocked. "Don't be afraid of me, dearest," said Aylmer, smiling. "This liquid can do good as well as harm. But look, here is a powerful beauty lotion. Just a few drops in a bowl of water can wash away freckles as easily as you wash your hands. A stronger mix would remove all the color from someone's face, turning even the prettiest woman into a pale ghost." "Is this the lotion you plan to use on my cheek?" Georgiana asked with worry. "Oh, no," her husband answered quickly. "That only works on the surface. Your case needs something that goes much deeper." When Aylmer talked with Georgiana, he often asked her very specific questions about how she was feeling and whether the room or the air temperature felt good to her. He asked these questions so often that Georgiana began to wonder if she was already being affected by something. Maybe something in the air or in her food. She even imagined, though she wasn't sure it was real, that something strange was happening in her body, a feeling moving through her veins, making her heart tingle in a way that was both uncomfortable and pleasant. Still, whenever she dared to look in the mirror, she saw herself pale as a white rose, with the red birthmark still on her cheek. Not even Aylmer hated the mark now as much as she did. To pass the time while Aylmer worked on his experiments, Georgiana looked through the books in his science library. In many old and dusty books, she found parts that read more like stories or poems. These were written by old-time scientists, like Albertus Magnus, Cornelius Agrippa, Paracelsus, and a famous monk who was said to have created a talking bronze head. These old scientists were ahead of their time, but they still believed in strange ideas, and people thought they had discovered magical powers through studying nature. Even the early books of the Royal Society were full of strange and imaginative ideas, as their members didn't yet know what was truly possible or impossible in science, and they often wrote about amazing wonders or suggested wild ways to make those wonders happen. But the book that interested Georgiana the most was a big one written by Aylmer himself. In it, he had written down every experiment he had ever done, including what he was trying to do, how he did it, and whether it succeeded or failed, along with why it turned out that way. The book was really the story of Aylmer's life, full of passion, big dreams, hard work, and imagination. He worked with physical things as if they were everything, yet he still believed in something greater, something beyond the physical. Even the most ordinary bit of earth seemed to come alive in his hands. As Georgiana read, she admired Aylmer more than ever and loved him even more deeply. But now she didn't trust his judgment quite as completely as before. She noticed that even his greatest successes didn't quite reach the perfect results he wanted. His best discoveries were like pretty stones, not the priceless jewels he was truly hoping to find, and he knew it too. The book, full of amazing work that had made Aylmer famous, was also a very sad story. It showed again and again how human beings, made of both spirit and body, often fall short of their highest hopes because they are held back by their earthly nature. Maybe every truly gifted person, in any field, would see their own struggles in Aylmer's writing. These thoughts touched Georgiana so deeply that she leaned her face on the open book and began to cry. That's how Aylmer found her. It's dangerous to read a sorcerer's book, Aylmer said with a smile, though his face looked uneasy and upset. Georgiana, there are parts of that book I can barely look at without losing my mind. Be careful it doesn't affect you the same way. It made me admire you even more, she said. Ah, wait until I finally succeed, he replied. Then you can admire me all you want. I might actually deserve it. But come now, I came looking for you just to hear your voice. Sing for me, my love. So Georgiana sang, her beautiful voice calming his heart. Then Aylmer left her with boyish excitement, promising that she wouldn't have to stay in her room much longer, and that success was already certain. As soon as he left, Georgiana suddenly felt the strong urge to follow him. She had forgotten to tell him something important. For the past few hours, she had been feeling a strange sensation in the birthmark. It wasn't painful, but it made her feel uneasy all over. Hurrying after him, she entered the laboratory for the first time. The first thing she saw was the furnace, glowing hot and bright, like it had been burning forever, judging by the thick black soot above it. A machine for distilling liquids was working steadily. All around the room were scientific tools, glass tubes, metal pots, cylinders, and other strange equipment. A machine for creating electricity was also ready to use. The air felt heavy and hard to breathe, full of strange chemical smells from the experiments. The plain, simple look of the room, with its bare walls and brick floor, felt odd to Georgiana, who had grown used to the beauty of her elegant bedroom. But more than anything else, what grabbed her attention was Aylmer himself. He looked as pale as death, anxious and deeply focused, leaning over the furnace as if everything depended on his full attention, whether the liquid inside would bring eternal happiness or terrible misery. He looked completely different from the hopeful and cheerful face he had shown to Georgiana earlier. Carefully now, Aminadab, carefully, you machine of a man, you man of clay, Aylmer muttered, more to himself than to his assistant. If there is even a little mistake, it will all be ruined. Ho, ho, grunted Aminadab. Look, master, look! Aylmer quickly looked up, and at first blushed, then turned even paler when he saw Georgiana. He rushed to her and grabbed her arm so hard that his fingers left a mark. Why did you come here? Don't you trust your husband? He shouted angrily. Will you ruin this experiment with that cursed birthmark? You shouldn't be here. Go away, spying woman. Go! No, Aylmer, said Georgiana firmly, because she was not weak or easily frightened. You are the one who shouldn't complain. You don't trust your wife. You've been hiding your deep worry about this experiment. Don't think so badly of me, my husband. Tell me the truth about the risk we face and don't be afraid. I won't run from it. After all, your risk is greater than mine. No, no, Georgiana, said Aylmer impatiently. It must not be. I agree, she said calmly. And Aylmer, I will drink whatever you give me, but I will take it the same way I would take poison, if it came from your hand. My brave wife, said Aylmer, deeply touched. I didn't realize how strong and deep your heart is until now. I will keep nothing secret any more. You must know that this red mark, though it looks small, is deeply connected to your body in ways I didn't expect. I have already given you medicines powerful enough to change almost anything, except your whole body. There is only one thing left to try. If that doesn't work, we will fail." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" she asked. "Because, Georgiana," Aylmer said quietly, "there is danger." "Danger? The only danger is that this horrible mark will stay on my face," cried Georgiana. "Take it off, no matter what it costs. Otherwise, we'll both lose our minds." "Heaven knows your words are too true," said Aylmer sadly. "Now, my love, go back to your room. Very soon everything will be ready." He walked her back to her room and said goodbye with a serious kindness that showed more than words how much this moment meant. After he left, Georgiana sat quietly, deep in thought. She thought carefully about Aylmer and understood him better than ever before. Her heart was full of both pride and fear at how noble his love was, so pure and high that it would accept nothing less than perfection. He could not be happy with anything less than the perfect dream he had of her. She realized this kind of love was greater than the kind that would accept flaws just to be kind. That kind would lower the meaning of true love. With all her heart, she wished that just for a moment she could live up to his perfect dream of her. She knew it could only be for a moment, because his mind was always moving forward, always reaching for more. She heard Aylmer's footsteps returning. He carried a clear glass cup filled with a liquid as colorless as water, but so bright it looked like it could give eternal life. Aylmer was pale, but it seemed more because of how serious and focused he was, not because he was afraid or unsure. "The mixture is perfect," he said, answering the question in Georgiana's eyes. "Unless all my science is wrong, it will not fail." "Except for you, my dear Aylmer," said Georgiana. "I might prefer to remove this mark of being human by giving up life itself, rather than by any other way. Life feels like a sad thing for someone who has reached the level of understanding I have. If I were more simple and unaware, I might be happy. If I were stronger, I might be able to live with hope. But being the way I am, I think I am the most ready of all people to die." "You are ready for heaven without even having to die," said her husband. "But why should we talk about dying? The potion will work. Look at what it does to this plant." On the window seat, there was a geranium plant with sickly yellow spots covering its leaves. Aylmer poured a little of the liquid onto the soil in the pot. After a short time, when the roots had absorbed the liquid, the yellow spots began to disappear, and the leaves turned fresh and green again. "I didn't need proof," said Georgiana calmly. "Give me the glass. I gladly trust your word with my life." "Drink then, thou lofty creature," exclaimed Aylmer with fervid admiration. "There is no taint of imperfection on thy spirit. Thy sensible frame, too, shall soon be all perfect." She quaffed the liquid and returned the goblet to his hand. "It is grateful," said she with a placid smile. "Methinks it is like water from a heavenly fountain, for it contains I know not what of unobtrusive fragrance and deliciousness. It allays a feverish thirst that had parched me for many days. Now, dearest, let me sleep. My earthly senses are closing over my spirit like the leaves around the heart of a rose at sunset." She spoke the last words with a gentle reluctance, as if it required almost more energy than she could command to pronounce the faint and lingering syllables. Scarcely had they loitered through her lips ere she was lost in slumber. Aylmer sat by her side, watching her aspect with the emotions proper to a man, the whole value of whose existence was involved in the process now to be tested. Mingled with this mood, however, was the philosophic investigation characteristic of the man of science. Not the minutest symptom escaped him. A heightened flush of the cheek, a slight irregularity of breath, a quiver of the eyelid, a hardly perceptible tremor through the frame, such were the details which, as the moments passed, he wrote down in his folio volume. Intense thought had set its stamp upon every previous page of that volume, but the thoughts of years were all concentrated upon the last. As he worked, Aylmer kept looking at the red hand-shaped mark on Georgiana's cheek, and each time he looked, he shuddered. But once, for some strange reason he couldn't explain, he kissed the mark. Right away, his heart pulled back in regret. In her deep sleep, Georgiana moved slightly and murmured, as if she was upset. Aylmer went back to watching her closely. His watching was not useless. The red mark, which had looked so bright against the pale skin of her cheek, now began to fade. She was still very pale, but with every breath she took, the mark became less and less visible. It had looked frightening when it was there, but now that it was fading, it seemed even more frightening. If you have ever watched the colors of a rainbow disappear from the sky, you would understand how this strange symbol slowly faded away. "Heaven above, it's almost gone," Aylmer whispered, barely able to hold in his excitement. "I can hardly see it now. It worked! It worked! Now it's just the faintest pink color. Even the smallest blush would hide it. But she looks so pale." He pulled open the curtain and let sunlight fill the room, shining onto her cheek. At that same moment, he heard a rough, deep laugh, the sound his servant Aminadab always made when he was very pleased. "Ah, you clumsy man! You creature of the earth!" Aylmer shouted, laughing wildly. "You have done your job well. The body and the soul, earth and heaven, have both done their part. Laugh, you thing of muscles and bones. You've earned it." His shouting woke Georgiana. She slowly opened her eyes and looked into the mirror Aylmer had placed nearby. A soft smile appeared on her lips when she saw how faint the red hand was now. The mark, which had once burned so brightly and ruined their happiness, had almost vanished. But then she looked at Aylmer with a strange, worried expression that he didn't understand. "My poor Aylmer," she whispered. "Poor? No, I'm the richest, happiest man alive," he cried. "My perfect bride, it worked! You are perfect!" "My poor Aylmer," she said again, her voice full of love beyond this world. "You have reached for something great. You tried your best. Don't be sad that with such a noble heart, you gave up the best the earth could offer. Aylmer, my dear Aylmer, I'm dying." Sadly, it was true. The red birthmark had been connected to Georgiana's life itself. It was the mark that kept her angel-like soul joined to her human body. As the last bit of the birthmark faded from her cheek, the one sign of her human imperfection, her final breath left her body. Her spirit paused for a moment near Aylmer, then rose up to heaven. Then came the rough, low laugh of Aminadab once again. The heavy, earthy part of life always seems to laugh when it defeats the soul's higher dreams. In this world, where we are only half-formed, our spirits long for something more complete, a higher, perfect world. If Aylmer had only been wiser, he would not have lost the happiness that was already within his reach. He was too caught up in one small moment. He could not see beyond this short life. If he had lived with his heart set on what truly matters, he might have found perfection not in changing Georgiana, but in loving her as she was.